Hello and welcome to the sixth part of the series, and in this tutorial we'll learn how to add an item to the cart, set up our cart, and understand the custom JavaScript code that powers our cart. Now it is super important that you pay attention in understanding the mechanism of the custom JavaScript code itself so that you can use that as a foundation to prompt GPT in creating your own custom cart. So with that being said, let's jump straight into it. Before I start playing around with Wized, I think I've addressed this in the first tutorial, but I'm going to repeat this again. So our cart.js file, of course, contains all the functionalities that we need for our cart. Now, instead of going through this entire code, I'm just going to address this as we set up our requests over on Wized and explain to you all the functionalities of the code itself in a very high level overview. I think that's the best way to explain it. So yeah, with that being said, let's just quickly jump over to Wiz and head over to data store here. Now what we want to do is we're going to create 4 variables. Now they're related to the cart, and we're going to learn more about in details as to what exactly is it that they do. So we're going to call this current product details, and they're all case sensitive, so they have to match exactly the way we type it because it's linked to the custom JavaScript. How is it linked? We're going to learn all about it later on. All right, so let's add the second one. It's going to be called cart IDs, and then we have a third one, call it checkout items. And then let's add the last one and call it cart empty. Now that we have that added in, I've already went ahead and I've created the cart folder in the data out request. So what I need to do is select any random requests and duplicate that request. And what I'm going to do is call this fetch cart items. Okay, now everything is going to be the same key. Okay, so obviously I already have the body on my notes here, so I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste this in here. All right, so let me just quickly explain what's happening. We have our variable that we just recently created, which is the cart IDs. And then based off of that variable, we start querying and we grab the product ID, the product name, the product handle, and then we have the product price. And then we're also grabbing the product image. That is it. So I'm just going to keep it at that for now. All right, so let's set up a trigger for this. Now, basically what we want to do is we want to trigger this on any cart item, and because the cart item is pretty much present on every page, let's just quickly open up our cart so that I can target which one I should go for. You know what? I'm gonna go for this. Let's see if this, okay, so cart item. Okay. So let's do that. So we are going to trigger this when the attribute of cart item is present. Okay, now I would run this request, but it's not going to work because our variable is empty right now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this and move on to the next step. Oh, right, I need to add this, to move it to our cart folder. Okay, there we go. Now next on the list we have is the add to cart, but before we do that, we're going to go ahead and actually hide some stuff on the cart itself. So let's head over to WEBFLOW, and what we're going to do is we're going to select the empty cart wrapper. All you need to know now, I know I'm not getting into more details about what these elements are, what it is that they do, but I will be running through these just in a bit. For now, we're going to hide this. So our cart needs to contain the loader and then we have the actual cart items and our subtotal div right here. So we're just going to hide our cart, exit out of this, and publish our page. Okay, so it's been a while since our page has been published, so what I'm going to do is head back over to Wized, and now what we're going to do is finally try to understand what these 4 variables are for. So we're going to start off with the current product details. So let's set up our action. I'm going to set up an action for this and call it add to cart. And what we're going to do, we're not going to assign it to in any folder, and we're targeting the add to cart, which is this button right here. And on click, we want to set the variable, and we're going to select the variable called current product details. And for this value, we are going to put in a body here. We're going to put in an object here. And this object is going to make a lot more sense in just a bit. So currently it's targeting the data that's labeled as 19, which actually doesn't exist. So I'm going to change this to 4. Okay, so now it works. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this so that I can show this to you what this object is all about. And just to confirm, the number 4 request is this, get product details, which is basically the request that grabs all the information of the current product page that we're looking at. And if I bring this over to Code Sandbox, okay, so I've already pasted this in. So on Code Sandbox, I've just temporarily pasted this object inside of cart.js just to kind of explain what's happening. So we're creating an object that contains the product ID, the product price, the product quantity, and the product variant ID. Why are we collecting this object? We're collecting this so that when you click on add to cart, all this information is stored in the local storage. So once it's stored in the local storage, we then grab those items for a lot of purposes. So we constantly keep accessing that information for adjusting the quantity of a given item. We want to tally the total price for all the cart items that we have, and a lot of things. So that's essentially why we're doing this, but we're going to get more into that in details. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this out so that our cart.js doesn't get messed up. Okay. So you'll notice that the current product details is currently undefined. So what's going to happen is that as soon as I click on add to cart, you will notice that the current product details is going to fill up. Then what happens is our custom JavaScript is going to grab the details from that, and then it's going to store it in our local storage. Once it stores that in the local storage, the second step it does is it takes the product ID and it puts it in an array inside of cart IDs. So once it puts that inside of cart IDs, it runs the request of fetch cart items, the one that we have just created, fetch cart items, which basically renders all the items that we have in this cart. So let's get to see that in action. We're not going to be able to see that in action, but you should be able to see some stuff happening in the variable. So like I said, when we click on add to cart, the first thing we're going to notice is current product details going to get filled up. And then we're going to see the product ID in the cart IDs. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to click on it. And it did not work. Oh, right. It did not work because I need to reload the page. My bad. Okay. Okay, so before I actually click on it, let me just check if everything is okay. All right, everything should work. All right, let's see. So click on this. Perfect. So, okay, now let's pay attention to the current product details. Over here, you'll notice that it reflects the entire object that we've inserted. So we have the product ID, we have the product price, and then we have the product quantity, which is set to blank, by the way. The custom JavaScript sets that to 1 by default, so you don't have to worry about the quantity. And then we have the product variant ID. I think I've mentioned this before, but we need the product variant ID for our checkout. And that's it. And then the custom JavaScript grabs the ID and then stores just the product ID inside of cart IDs in the form of an array. Also, if I take you to inspect and show you, actually, I'm just going to click on responsive here. And let me take you to application here. So you'll notice that our custom JavaScript code has created 2 keys. One is Wized products in cart and Wized cart timestamp. So if you click on Wized products in cart, you'll notice that our item has been added inside of local storage. So it shows the quantity of 1, and then you can see the product variant ID, the price, the product ID itself, and you'll notice that over here, it already went ahead and did the calculation for us. Because we have 1 item in our cart, it already went ahead, did the subtotal pricing, and it also went ahead and did the shipping for us as well, which is really neat. So yeah, that's how it works. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start setting up the cart. But before I start setting this up, let me just quickly run through from the top what exactly our custom JavaScript accomplishes. So we have a free shipping checker. Now this is something that your cart may or may not have. That's completely up to you. But let me show you some cool new stuff that you can do with this. I'm going to jump over to Code Sandbox and scroll all the way up here, and you'll find the function for our custom cart right over here, and the shipping bar is right here. So this is basically the shipping calculator that we have. So let's say that your shipping depends. So let's say that the value for allowing the customer to have free shipping is 300. So basically what you want to do is change this 100 here to 300, and then change this 100 to 300. So that way we can change the value. And then what you want to do is change this 100 to 300 as well. So this is responsible for setting that progress bar. So it's going to adjust the progress bar accordingly. And then it also checks the subtotal price and then starts to compare if it's above 300 or lower than 300. And then it calculates the amount as well based on the amount remaining and gives you the remainder of how much more do you need to spend to get free shipping. So what I'm going to do is actually, I don't think there is, let me check. So if I hit on inspect, go to application. Okay, so the quantity is not going to work as of yet because we still have to set this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to revert back to the free shipping in a bit. But yeah, I promise you that the shipping actually does work. So I'm just going to revert this back to the way it was. So I'm going to retry this once we have set everything up. So let's actually focus on that. Okay, so that's what the shipping does. And then we have our, okay, let me just reload this. Okay, so that's what our shipping does here. And then we obviously know what the cart items are doing over here. This is something that we're going to have to generate it ourselves using the actions. And then we have our subtotal. And then we have our checkout, which is something that we will work on the next tutorial. So for this, we're just working on add to cart functionality and the cart itself. Okay, so the first action that we should create is I'm going to call it cart filled visibility. So the cart filled is this one right here. So the wrapper that has all the cart items, we're going to control its visibility. And I think it has cart filled. Oh, there we go. So that's the item that we want to affect. And we're going to click on set visibility. And we are going to check if cart empty. So we're going to select this variable here, vCart empty. And basically, we wanted to see if it's not equals to true. So only then it should be visible. So I forgot to address what the vCart empty is for. So we're going to address the checkout items in the next tutorial, but the vCart empty functionality is basically the custom JavaScript code on every time you load the page up, the custom JavaScript code checks local storage to see if there are any items there. If there are, then it sets a Boolean value to the Wized variable of cart empty. So like, hey, cart empty is basically true. The cart indeed is empty. And if it's set to false, that means the cart is not empty. The cart is filled. So that's exactly what we're doing here. Okay, so let's refresh that. And you'll also notice that on page load, you'll notice that this number changes, the quantity count. Our custom JavaScript also does that. So on page load, it tallies up all the quantity of across all the items that you have saved up in the in local storage. All right, perfect. It's showing up. So let's go ahead and remove the item from our local storage just to see if this works. So if I click on the cart now, you'll notice that we don't have anything, which is great. And the subtotal area is gone as well. Perfect, it works. Now what we're going to do is focus on this loader here. So let's do that. I'm going to replicate this and call it cart loader visibility. And I believe it has the attribute of cart loader. Oh, set visibility. And we want this to be visible. So we're going to take this off. So get product details. Nope, that's not the one. Fetch cart items is requesting. So is requesting true. So when the fetch cart items is running, is requesting, only then we should be able to see the loader. So let's see that in action one more time. I think you should be able to see some part of it. So let's click on add to cart, and there we go. It goes away. And our item has been added to cart. The subtotal has done its pricing. The shipping is working. Perfect. Now next on the list we have is render cart items. So let's do that. Render, shoot. You know what? I'm going to just replicate this. Render cart items. And we're going to select cart items and select render list. What is happening? Okay, let's do this again. Render list. So we need to grab our fetch cart items again. And which one is, there we go. That's the one we're after, and v index. So what we're going to do to really understand if this is working, I'm going to go ahead and go to another product page and have two different products in our cart or in local storage, because our local storage is key here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. Perfect. So we got two products. There we go. We actually have this working. And if I close this, we also have the correct reading here. We're getting our subtotal. We're getting the shipping again. Perfect. All right. Okay, so next on the list we have is set our cart attribute. So what that means is we need to set a data attribute to our cart. So let's go ahead and do that, and I will explain why we're setting an attribute. Set cart item attributes. This is going to, this is going to target the same thing. Set HTML attribute and call it data attribute ID. And basically what we're targeting is the product ID. So that's what we need. So this one right here, this data path. So I'm going to go ahead, select that, and change this to v index. Now you will notice that our quantity is going to start to work because of our data attribute ID. Let's see if that is true. And there we go. So let me explain what's happening. So again, from the top, when the page loads up, our custom JavaScript checks for the local storage and checks how many items and products do we have in the local storage. Then based on that, it executes the fetch cart items. And it also it executes that request only then when it has products in local storage. So it grabs those product IDs from it, fills up cart IDs, and then executes fetch cart items. And that's how it renders out all the cart items that we have. And then based on the cart items that has been, so based on the fetch cart items, the data that has been retrieved from that request, it matches up the product ID and matches up to the product ID that is inside of local storage, and then it reflects the input quantity here. I really hope that made sense. So yeah, that's what's going on. I know it sounds really complicated, but if you repeat this whole video again, I think it will start to click on. Okay, so now what we're going to do is continue setting up our actions, and let's work on, this time we're going to set cart product image. I think the remove button should work as well, because the remove is actually tied in with the custom JavaScript. So we're not setting this up on Wized. Let me just try that real quick. Yep, it works. Beautiful. All right, so let's close that and go ahead and set our cart image. Again, we grab the image from our fetch cart items. There we go, that's the one. And then we set the src set as well. Let's reload that page. Perfect. So let's add this to the cart as well. Amazing. Now let's duplicate this and set cart product name. again, we are going to go after our fetch cart items. There we go. I really hope that this is making sense as to what exactly it is that we're doing here. I believe that is it. And now we're going to duplicate this again. And so we're going to duplicate this again and call this cart product price. Okay, so let me just check. Cart item total. Okay, cart item total. And we have the price there. Get rid of that and add in this and put it, change this to v index and reload the page again. Let's open this up. Amazing. Also, another functionality of the custom JavaScript code is if you click into the quantity input and you hit on the up or down arrow key, it updates immediately as well. It registers that. So that functionality is also part of your custom JavaScript here. Now, because we've come this far, let me show you the whole shipping thing that I was trying to convey earlier. So let's go ahead and change this to 300. Again, just to remind you, this is the progress bar. This one is to check if the subtotal price is more or less than 300. And this is to check if how much is remaining to obtain, what is the difference to obtain free shipping. So I'm going to go ahead, save that, and jump over to Wized, reload the page. Open this up. Perfect. So you are 120 pounds away. So let's increase this. As you can see, I'm almost close to 300, and there we go. That's how the shipping checker works. I'm going to head over to Wized here and Code Sandbox, and revert this back to 100. Save this and get back to Wiz. Okay, now let's move on to the next part of this tutorial, and that is the working with the empty state of this cart. So the whole cart functionality is done. This all works as intended. So what we're going to do is go ahead, remove that. Okay, now that is removed. So we're going to jump back over to WEBFLOW, open up our cart, and bring back our empty state. So now it's going to be a lot easier to work with because we have gone over the hard stuff. Now we're pretty much going to be smooth sailing for us from this point on now. Okay, so let's jump over and check this out. Okay, so we can see the empty state, but we need to set up the visibility for our empty state. So I'm going to replicate this, and I'm going to call it set visibility to cart empty. And we're going to select cart empty. Click on set visibility, and it is visible. So it's going to be visible. If you remember correctly, we have a separate variable for our empty cart. It's only visible when this is true, which in this case, it is true. So let's reload the page and see if it's actually working. Okay. Now let's try adding a product to our cart, and it's gone. So let's reload the page one more time. Okay, so it's not working this time. Okay, so I did manage to find the issue for this. So let me try reloading this page one more time and click on it. There we go. We have the product here. So I made a mistake, and basically our request here of fetch cart items didn't need a trigger. So I've gotten rid of the trigger. And the reason why we don't need a trigger is because our custom JavaScript code is the one that executes this based on a lot of conditions. So yeah, that's why we don't need to set up any sort of trigger from Wized. This request here is automatically executed by the custom JavaScript code. Now, next on the list, we have so if I get rid of this, you'll notice that we have our editor's picks here. It's supposed to be 3 products in total. So we need to work on this area. So that's the final part of this tutorial. So let's work on this. I think and we need to repeat exactly what we just did for add to cart. So before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and drop all this into the cart folder. So I'm going to click create a folder called cart and drop this in. Okay, so we don't want add to cart in the cart. What we're going to do is we're going to put this in our product page. Yep, that's where we're going to put this add to cart. But for the rest, we're going to drop it in our cart folder. So tidy this up a little. And we're going to go ahead and create a new folder and call it editor's choice, with the parent folder being the cart. Alrighty, so we're going to close that. And now before we get to this, I need to create the request. We need to create another additional request for our editor's picks here. So I'm going to duplicate this and call this fetch editor choices, and then call it products for cart. And everything stays the same, but the body changes, and I already have the body prepped up, so I'm just going to copy that from my notes again and paste it in here. So let's quickly review as to what's happening here. So we are targeting our collection, which is the editor choices, and then it grabs the first 3 products. So let me just quickly jump over to Shopify. If you remember correctly, if we head over to collections, we have our editor's choices, and clicking here shows us these 3 products. So that's essentially what we're grabbing. And then alongside with that, we are grabbing the product ID, the product title, the product handle, and then we have the product image, and then we have the variant ID and the variant price as well. Again, we need the variant ID for the checkout, so that's why we need that. Okay, so I don't think we need to set any trigger for this, but what we do need is to make sure that when the fetch cart items is executed as an after request, we want our this newly created request of fetch editor choices to be executed as well. Products for cart. I'm going to copy this because we only want to make sure that this is conditional. Okay, let's click on this just to make sure that this is working. I'm going to reload the page. Okay, perfect. This is working. So we can get started with our actions. and we should be able to see this live pretty soon. Okay, so the first one we have is add editor choice item to cart. So this is going to be an exact repeat of what we've just done. All right. So we're going to switch the X-ray on. Cart editor item. Editor item. And then on click, we want to perform a request of, and then we're going to, oh, sorry, we're not going to perform a request. We're going to set the variable to current product details. So as soon as someone clicks on this, we grab all the details for that product and then store it into our product details. And then it's going to do that whole circle again. And for the value, what I'm going to do is going to copy the value from our product right here at the cart. So I'm going to copy this object here, head over to the editor's choice. Oh, right, it's right here. Paste this in here. Okay, now instead of 4, obviously, we need to grab and change this to our data request, fetch editor choices. So it's basically 8. So I need to change this to 8. It targets those data path. Okay, so just simply forget what I've just said so far. It's complete garbage. What I'm going to do is we're going to copy this entire thing and get rid of it. And then we are going to jump over to Code Sandbox and just use this temporarily to edit our object. So what I'm going to do is erase all these off and replace it with the appropriate data path. So let's focus on the ID for now. Okay, so we need the product ID, which would be this one right here. So let's copy that. But instead of 0, we want v index. So let's copy that and drop it here. And then we have our price next. So let's grab the price as well. Don't know why I didn't think of this before. Price, there we go. Let's select that again and replace the 0 with v index. Okay, perfect. So let's take that off and just copy that. Price, and then quantity as is, the product variant ID. Very important. There we go. Product variant ID. And we're going to change this to v index. Copy that and place it here. And then we're going to copy the entire object, paste this in, and there we go. Okay, perfect. So that's out of the way now. Let's close this and let's create our second one. We're going to render our editor choice cart items. And we're going to select the cart editor item for this one. Rendered list. Okay, so let's see which one it is. I believe it's going to be this one right here. Let's reload the page to find out. We should be able to see 3 item links. Oh, right, I forgot to select v-index. Okay, now it should work. So we should see 3 link blocks there now. Perfect, it works. Awesome. So let's duplicate this and rename this to set editor choice cart product image. Cart editor item image, and we're going to set the HTML attribute. Okay, we're going to select that, the index, and set HTML attribute, src set, copy this, paste this in, and now let's reload the page so we should be able to see our images set in. Okay, now let's focus on setting the product name. So editor choice product image, but we're going to call it name this time. Cart editor item name. Okay, so let's select set text, plain text, and let's go for title here. Let's duplicate this and also set the price. Put in our currency here. Perfect. And let's reload this page. Okay, the price is not updating. Let's see what's wrong with that. Plain text. I forgot to put in the v-index. There we go. So that should fix the issue. All right, perfect. All right, so let's see if we can add this to our cart now. So let's check our data store here. Now, if you remember correctly, once I click here, our current product details should fill up, which will trigger our JavaScript code, and it's going to grab the value from the current product details and then store it inside of local storage. And then once that is successful, it's going to grab the product ID and then from the local storage and then store that inside of the cart ID array. And then once that is successful, it's then going to move on to fetch, executing the request of fetch cart items. So let's go ahead and do that. Perfect. It's done exactly that. So this was what the whole tutorial was about, adding this product to the cart and how the core functionality actually works behind the scenes. Also, another thing that I wanted to point out is that there's this weird bug. So this bug, now, if you were to click on the second or the third item, I'm clicking on the second and the third item and it doesn't work. And I think it could have something to do with my custom code. I haven't been able to figure that out yet, but I have found a workaround for this in the meantime. So what you can do is if you click on add editor choice item to cart, and if you duplicate this, okay, so if you just duplicate it and reload the page, that fixes the issue apparently. So let's see if that is the case. I'm going to go ahead and click on Ficus, and there we go. it adds the product. So I'm going to remove that again and add the second one this time, and it works completely fine. I'm not sure why that is, but yeah. So that brings us to the end of this tutorial. And I know you may have a lot of questions, so please feel free to get in touch with me or leave a question on, leave your queries on the comment below, and I'll get to those as soon as I can. And I will see you on the next one.